Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. More tea, magic ring, and we're definitely drinking from the Mercury cup today. If my appearance is particularly mad scientist in this moment, it's because I've been playing with harmonics. I mean, for years and much more so for months. But today, though, like the to-do list is pretty long. I've been making calculations and exploring what they might mean, spiritually, if you will. And so I wanted to share a couple of techniques for playing with harmonics, right? So this is a term that relates the astronomical science, number in time and space, with one of our sister sciences, which is musical harmony, number in time, frequency, right? So harmonics are the idea that like every note, for example, is composed actually of several frequencies or several vibrations. La, right? Like, as I'm singing that, you're hearing a particular timbre or tone, right? Which is based upon the harmonic series. So la is also la, and then the fifth above that, and the octave above that, and the fourth above that, and on and on and on, right? So there's the beautiful sister science of musical harmony, number in time or frequency, which is really necessary for us to understand something about astronomy, number in time and space. For example, what is the frequency of a lunar return? I've been speaking about that a bunch lately. Do you mean the moon to the same degree of the zodiac? So that would be a tropical month or a sidereal month if you prefer a star-based zodiac. They're basically the same. Tropical month, 27.321582 days. Sidereal month, 27.321660 days, right? Or do you mean like a lunar return in regards to the shape of her smile at the time of your birth, the lunar phase, which is about the synodic month of 29.53059 days, right? So bring your calculators. We're going to definitely employ actually the calculator here, because I'm going to show you a few different just ways that you can play with harmonics. In astrology, when we use that term, we are describing relationships between planets and points, like geometrical relationships that typically exist outside of the traditional canon of aspects, if you will. I shouldn't say that, because like the opposition, right? It's in the Thema Mundi. Traditionally, this is the Saturnian aspect. Saturn in Capricorn opposite Cancer's domicile, or the moon's domicile in Cancer, right? Saturn in Aquarius opposite the sun in Leo in the Thema Mundi. Like, that's Saturn is the opposition, Mars the square. You can see that in the chart of the world soul, the Thema Mundi as well. Aries Mars is square to the moon's place, Cancer. Scorpio Mars's nocturnal sign from a traditional point of view, is square to the sun's home of Leo, right? Venus is associated with the sextile, Jupiter with the trine, right? So for Venus, Taurus is sextile Cancer, the moon's place, and Libra is sextile Leo, the sun's place, in the Thema Mundi, where Hermes, we are told, first gave us this doctrine of dispositorship or domicile lordship, or many these days will use this word I do not prefer, called rulership. Okay, the Jupiter signs, traditionally diurnal and nocturnal respectively, are Sagittarius and Pisces. Sagittarius trine Leo, the sun's home. Pisces trine Cancer, the moon's home, right? So the trines are a Jupiterian aspect traditionally, where the opposition Saturnian, the squares Martian, the sextiles Venusian. For Mercury, there isn't one. Mercury signs are neighbors to the sun and the moon. And those neighboring signs traditionally are not in an aspectual relationship, but rather they are in conjunct. you will actually find that signs opposite one another are certainly not the most opposite archetypally, right? They're actually two sides of one pole. Great example, Libra and Aries. Put them together, and if they're willing to share an A, it spells libraries, and this is the book of love, relationships. We often speak about Libra as the relationship sign. No, it's one half of a relationship pole. Libra, othership, must be balanced with Aries, selfness, not selfish, selfness. If we want to meet in the middle way of right relationship, Aries and Libra are two sides of one thing, just as hot and cold are two sides of one thing called temperature. All right. So traditionally, we have these 7 aspect from any sign. Whole sign aspects, like 30 degrees, right? So the neighbors are not there. Those are the signs that are like most opposite archetypally. Look at Pisces and Aries. And the way that we often explain that as well, Pisces is like, let's talk about polarity, triplicity, and quadruplicity. Pisces is nocturnal. Some will say yin, feminine, whatever, inner. I'll say nocturnal. By triplicity, elements, water. By quadruplicity, it's mutable, right? Pisces, the nocturnal, mutable water sign, where Aries is a diurnal, cardinal fire sign. Like there's nothing similar. And you see this also in the quincunx arrangements. So the 150 degrees, quincunx 5/12 of the circle. Okay. So like Aries and Virgo. Aries, diurnal, cardinal, fire. Virgo, nocturnal, mutable, earth, right? There's nothing shared there. And traditionally, these 150 degrees are also blind spots. I mean, intriguingly, the human eye has a lacuna in the vision at 150-degree angles because the optic nerve intersects the eyeball at that 150 degree, that quincunx angle. Now we have typically stereoscopic vision, which alleviates those blind spots, right? But you can play games that will help you see that there's places you can't see, at least with one eye. Anyway, traditionally, every sign, like let's talk about Aries, it has its 2 sextiles, that's Aquarius and Gemini. It has its 2 squares, that is Capricorn and Cancer. It has its 2 trines, Sagittarius and Leo. And it has its 1 opposition, Aries, opposite Libra. And all signs will have 4 blind spots. Its neighbors, so for Aries, that's Pisces and Taurus. And then the neighbors of its opposition or its polarity pair, right? Aries is opposite Libra. Libra's neighbors are Virgo, and Pisces is the quincunx, Virgo and Scorpio. Those are the quincunx signs from Aries. So you always get this mystic rectangle for Aries that's Pisces, Taurus, Virgo, and Scorpio of like blind signs that don't even exist in the Aries experience, right? This is like old traditional aspect theory, right? Aspect meaning to see, right? These days we just kind of learn them as geometries. Now we can take geometry beyond the 12 equal divisions of the zodiac, right? Zodiac's 360 degrees, you divide that by 12 and you get 12 signs of 30. And then there's this strange kind of old 7 rays or 7 aspects theory of traditional astrology, right? I mean, you might even add those things in and say, okay, there's a quincunx. I'll draw these lines on the chart, 150 degrees, or the semi-sextile neighboring signs. Okay, so let me show you a chart. I'm going to put my chart on the screen here. And I have, for example, this strong semi-sextile or neighboring signs of Mars here at 1.5 Cancer and Saturn here at 2.5 Leo, right? I have a strong quincunx between Venus at 15 Virgo and Aquarius, 14 Aquarius midheaven. And you can see that green line, and we can go to the grid, and there's this Venus midheaven, quincunx, and the Venus IC semi-sextile, okay? Or like the Mars Saturn semi-sextile, right? So traditionally, those green shapes actually just wouldn't be here. Okay, but we can go very non-traditional and look at aspects like this: a biseptile between Saturn and true black moon Lilith. Okay, maybe let's stay with visible beings. How about Mercury, Mars, biseptile? What? Venus, Mars, quintile. What strange things are these? Okay, so we want to talk about harmonic aspects. Now, I mistakenly said before, harmonic aspects will be like aspects that aren't of the traditional canon. That's not true. It's like the opposition is the second harmonic, right? And if we compare this musically, there's a couple ways I can do this. One, if you contemplate or listen to a vibrating string like a guitar string, and then cut that guitar string in half by pinching it with your finger, right? Now, half a string is going to feature a traveling wave, okay, that is half as long, and that means twice the frequency. So it's going to go back and forth in the same amount of time as it takes to go here, right? Twice the frequency, la, la, it's the octave, okay? And that's a 1-to-2 relationship. So like if I'm listening to something vibrating at 300 hertz, like 300 vibrations per second, it's going to produce a tone, and the octave of that tone is going to be 600 hertz. And it's literally twice the frequency, okay? And with a vibrating string, it's like cut it in half, double the frequency. We can think of the opposition in that regard. There's another way, in the way that I actually work with taking charts and bringing them into kind of musical expressions. And I do this work with a dear friend, a grand piano master, Eric Deutsch, where I kind of translate charts into musical harmony in like a series of symbolic scenes and send that to Eric, and he creates a beautiful piano version of your birth chart. It can be yours. If you're interested, go to geminibrett.com and the sessions page and find the Song of the Soul option there. I have to say, always now when I mention Eric and in our work together, that I don't know how long it's going to last, because Eric's recently joined the Black Crowes, band I've always loved, and that has him on the road all the time. But we do find times like he's at home right now, and he's got 5 songs to record. Okay, anyway, in that work I use like a chromatic map of the 12 signs to the 12 notes in a octave, at least from the Western harmonic point of view. And that's kind of a different model. And I guess I digress. The musical fifth, so it's like twinkle, twinkle. No, that's an octave. I don't sing too well. Sing twinkle, twinkle, little star to yourself. Or A, B, C, D, or Ba, Ba, Black Sheep. It's all the same tune, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, A, C, da, da. That's a fifth. And the fifth is found on a vibrating string when you cut the string length in 2/3. Right. So when we look at thirds, there's a very harmonic, beautiful consonant relationship. You can hear this musically, and we often associate that with the trine. So mathematically, we can find our way to these different harmonics, or vibrations, as David Cochrane calls them, an astrologer whose work I very much respect, who's very kind of much like pioneering this field of harmonic astrology and taking these harmonic aspects, if you will, to the next level. You can find the geometrical correspondent to a particular harmonic by dividing the 360 degrees by these different numbers. So for example, 360 degrees divided by 2, 180 degrees, right? That's the opposition, second harmonic. And the second, it's like the 1 becomes 2, or the not 2. It's spirit and soul on a higher level, I would say, but it's also me and you. It's like a relational thing. So we see in the ascendant and the descendant of the chart, first house, me, 7th house, we, right? So the second often deals with, though it can be oppositional. There's something that thinks differently than I do. There's something outside of me, right? That's kind of second harmonic reality. Divide 360, the degrees of the circle, by 3, and you get 120 degrees, which is the trine, right? Trines relate signs of the same element, like Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, the trigon of fire signs, right? And there's something in the Trinity, whether you go Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Spirit, Soul, and Matter, body, mind, and soul, whatever you want to do. Well, Brahma, Shiva, why I'm skipping Vishnu, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, whatever. We see the three all over the place. Like there's something in that Trinity. The one that I love to employ is like saxophone, saxophonist, and this need to create. That's the three. Because the four, which brings that saxophone and saxophonist dream, three, into reality, manifest is noise. It's saxotone, right? And the 4 is 90 degrees. Divide the circle of 360 by 4. It's the square family. Now, very importantly, the square family is entangled with the oppositional family, because I can take the opposition, 180 degrees, right, and divide that by 2, and I get 90 degrees. Divide that 90 degrees by 2, you get the semi-square of 45. Often called the 8th harmonic, because if you divide the circle by 8, you get 8 45-degree slices. This is an octile, an eighth, or a semi-square, half of a square, fourth. Nobody calls a square the semi-opposition, but it is that. Just as an octile or a 45-degree slice is a semi-opposition, right? So you can take that 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, keep going. Just look at the bytes and bits of digital code, right? Because it's binary, ones and O's, right? And you're going to find your way to that kind of doubling or having, like second harmonic realm. And so there's something that relates in the kind of vibrational perspective, the 2 and the 4, the 8, the 16, the 32, etc. These are all divisions of a circle that are like imperative to Uranian astrology, cosmobiology, like dial-based astrology, if you've been there. Okay. Well, that 8 is the first one we've discussed, the semi-square, 45 degrees, that is not a multiple of a sign, 30 degrees. And we can find our way there before the 8 if we divide the wheel by 5, right? The pentacle, the 5-pointed star, divide the 360 degrees of a circle by 5, and you find 72 degrees, right? So this is called the quintile. Some relate this like from, I've seen it related to like intellect and thinking and intelligence and curiosity, maybe more interestingly, but many now relate the 5s, the quintile group, to creativity. Now, why? Oh, some of this we can kind of find in what I, feel is number magic, or you might call it numerology, like number itself. Okay, so I love the example of saxophone, saxophonist, and the third thing, the dream or the need, this trinity that come together to create the saxotone, like manifest noise. Okay, that's the 4 manifest that comes into this world, if you will. The 5, which it is whispered the Pythagoreans knew as the number of love, is sound in this model, or your experience of that noise, which is very different than anyone else's experience of that noise. Like I could put a song on and some of you are going to dance and some of you are going to run away. We can see together in the sky a strong Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that's like noise, measurable quantity. But But the way that dances you is going to be different than the way that it dances me. Even if we're looking from the same place at the same time, probably astrology would suggest because we were born at different times and places. So this recent Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on December 21st, 2020 in the first degree of Aquarius, for example, is in like my ninth house. Maybe it's in your second. It was square my sun. Maybe it's conjunct your Mercury, you know? And so the art of the chart, which relates the measurable, the astronomy with the immeasurable, the correspondences, helps us understand astrologically why you might dance to the noise of one astronomical event differently than I will. And musical harmony is a sister science of ours, can help us with this too. Like if you were raised in a culture that listens to diatonic music, the pentatonic music might not sound as natural as if you were raised in a culture that lives there. Okay. Anyway, this is an interesting place to go in speaking about the fives because many do relate the five to this creative place. Is it because the Pythagoreans described the five as the number of love and why it's the first time and even in an odd number can relate because 2 plus 3 is 5? Oh, you say no, 1 plus 2. That's the first odd plus an even. No, because 1 is the all. And then 1 is not a number, friends. Don't believe that hype. Anyway, well, 5 also, which divides the circle, right, into fifths, and you can draw a 5-pointed star. You can draw a regular pentagon, right, or a pentagram, the 5-pointed star, a pentacle. And maybe you will witness over the course of 8 Earth years, Venus and Sun painting a 5-pointed star in our zodiac. So maybe it's related to Venus in this way. Some, especially like astrological alphabet speakers, will relate the 5 to the 5th house and sadly relate the 5th house to Leo. I was born with Gemini rising, the 5th is Libra, but okay. And then relate, because Leo is said to be the domicile of the sun to the 5th house. The 5th house is underground, friends, so why the fuck would the sun want night? Traditionally, the sun rejoices on the 9th, where it is on high, okay? And Venus rejoices in the 5th. Why? Because on average, in clock time, the sun's moving through the 5th house between like 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. So games of chance and taverns and romance and creativity, and therefore your children, because they are the creations of your passionate romantic risks. Do you see? So I could get to Venus in that way too, right? Does the 4th harmonic relate to the 4th house? And what is the 4th house? I mean, should I say, well, the 4th in modern kind of alphabet language is Cancer, is the moon? That's very new astrology, you should know. That doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. I have my own biases. In the Thema Mundi, which has Cancer rising, the 4th is Libra. But there's no planet that's said to rejoice in the 4th traditionally. It's Venus in the 5th, the moon in the 3rd, right? So in astrology, we're often taking, this kind of system and this system and trying to get them to relate. And that's like a worthy effort. And sometimes it really kind of gives clear images of connections. Sometimes it brings these contradictions that we just, as the mystical student of the starry science, have to deal with. Frankly, how can you learn about a 5-element system in China and kind of try to relate that to the 4-element system of the so-called West? Like a tricky thing to do, Okay. So if we divide the circle by 5, we get a 72 degrees. And this is the first of our kind of harmonics that is not a 30-degree or whole sign division of the wheel. Right? Divide by 2, 180, that's 6 signs. Divide by 3, 120 degrees, that's 4 signs. Divide by 4, 90 degrees is 3 signs. Divide by 6, right? 360 degrees divided by 6 is 60 degrees. This is why we used to call the the sextile, the hexagon. And interestingly, you take 60 degrees, well, three of those is in opposition, right? 60 times three is 180. Two of those is a trine. 60 times two is 120, right? So these families kind of all relate. It's cool how the sextile can bring the two and the three together like this. One of the ways that we'll kind of explore these harmonic aspects, especially when we start getting into higher numbers, like 14, for example. Well, one way to look at the 14 is it's 2 and 7. So if you can figure out what a 7 is, then the 14, 7 times 2, might bring together that 7 and the opposition, or the relationship to me and you version of the 7. Okay? So for me, the 7, because you cannot divide the circle equally by 7. Right? Let me show you what happens when you do. So we just take 360 degrees divided by 7. Okay, and you get this number. Okay, but that 9 right there, that 9 is 8571428, 8571428, 8571428, 8571428 until the cows come home. All right, this is an irrational, never-ending number. In some of the magic traditions or number magic traditions, the 7 is known as the first virgin because it is the first number which cannot divide the wheel of 360 degrees equally, cannot divide 12 equally either. So the septile, it's one of the things about it, in my opinion, and I'm certainly not the first, is that it is far out. And it's kind of Uranian. It brings us into our axis with the other world, if you will. Okay. So divide by 5, we get 72 degrees. And so we get an even number. You can draw a perfect 5-pointed star, but it's not a 30. It's not a whole sign, right? 72 is not, it's 30 plus another 12. It's somewhere in between the sextile of 60 degrees, 2 signs, and the square of 90 degrees, 3 signs. Okay, divide by 6, sextile, divide by 7. You can't even draw a perfect 7-pointed star. It's impossible. It's a very important part of 7ness, in my opinion, and I'm not the first. Divide by 8, 45 degrees. So, it's a sign and a half a sign. It's not a whole sign number, right? But the 8, 4, and 2. So maybe like a kind of relational experience of a square manifestation. And that's tension required to manifest the dream into reality, you see. Or as much as 8 is 4 and 2, it is 2 and 4. So, right, like how does relationship 2ness manifest 4ness? And that is a tense thing. The 8 is seeing the semi-square as kind of an aspect like 4 and 2, and 16, 32, 64, 128 all the way is seen as kind of a tense realm. Okay, but once we get to 8, we can talk about how 2 4s and how 4 2s. The 4 itself is like 2 and 2. What is the relationship of a relationship? That's like an interesting question. Typically a pretty tense one, and a beautiful one too. All right, divide by 9, 360 over 9, you get 40 degrees. So now it's not a whole sign aspect, the novile, but it's a beautiful kind of deep ensouled connection. It's been imperative for Jyotisha, like, what you might know as Vedic astrology, since what we think of as the beginning. Not my study, but I will say that these so-called divisional charts, and we'll look at one kind of here in our journey today, they're at the very heart of Indian astrology or Vedic astrology. Like, it's very rare for a practitioner of those sacred sciences to look at the radix chart, the Rasi, the natal chart, without also looking at the Nimvamsha, the 9th derivative chart, or a 9th harmonic chart. I will later this year teach a deep workshop that's going to show you much more about, computer buttons aside, how these divisional charts are created. And we'll talk in some way, although for me, it will be from kind of an outsider perspective of, the 9th division in that science versus, for example, the 3rd division, the zodiac, into slices 3 120 degree realms, or Here's an interesting one, like a 10th division, which was inherent in Western, like Hellenistic astrology as well. Divide the 360-degree wheel by 10, and you get these 36-degree slices. And, well, actually, I'm going the wrong direction. Let's divide the wheel by 36, and you get 10-degree slices. And so those are the decans, or the faces. And that work was done also in India, and is dividing signs into 3 slices of 10 degrees. Okay, but the way that that is worked with in the Hellenistic tradition in Jyotisha, like, they're not harmonic charts. And I'm taking this further than I want to today. That is so much better illustrated with illustrations, and I've got them all, but I'm saving them for a deep dive into harmonics class down the road, which I'm excited to teach. Time does not currently allow, and plus I'm also just personally, like, really deep walking this road of my own study and research into, like, kind of how some of these harmonic connections in a chart express. It's helpful to have elders, it's helpful to have tradition, it's helpful to have things written down. And I want to show you a wonderful resource that David Cochran created, that I use frequently. But I also spend time with this, like listening to frequency, contemplating number magic, which I explore also geometrically with the compass and the square. And, the astrology student in the day would always also learn geometry and harmony and number itself along the way. And I find it's kind of imperative to really tune into the essence of these things. But let me just show you, like, a kind of simple way you can get to harmonics in your chart. And then a resource, again, where you can explore what some have said about these things over time. Like, harmonics, at least in Western astrology, have not been explored much today, like David Cochran especially, but also like Rick Levine. Rick Levine, he'll say he can never draw a chart without quintiles and septiles, which are sevenths, or noviles, which are ninths. And then there's been, especially in England, a deep research by the likes of, like, Charles Addy, and astrologers since, like, David Hamblin, whose Spirit of Numbers is a very interesting book. All right, so let me show you just in my own chart a place where I've kind of explored often, which is Mercury and Venus, right? So if I go to, like, an essential dignity table, you're going to see that they're in mutual reception, right? So Mercury lives in Venus's sign of Libra, and Venus in Mercury's sign of Virgo. So now, interestingly, they're in conjunct neighboring signs, although in most of the traditional astrology, like mutual reception, this idea that they live in each other's homes, is to use the Jyotisha term, or the Vedic term, it's a yoga. It's a planetary connection that does not necessitate an aspect. So though neighboring signs, according to these traditions, cannot see one another, literally blind to one another, there is this connection through this mutual exchange. They're like on an exchange program, foreign exchange program. Mercury's living in Venus's land, and Venus in Mercury's land, okay? So by sign, they're in conjunct, they're 30 degrees away, and they're not that far out in that regard geometrically either, are they? Right, I add 30 degrees to 15 Virgo, and I get 15 Libra. All right, but my Mercury does not live at 15 Libra. He lives at 12 Libra, 39 arc minutes. Thank you very much. Right, and Venus is at 1503. Many softwares cast her at 1504, right? So I'm kind of used to seeing in different places, but it's because she's at 1503.40. Like, why Astro Gold is not rounding 40 seconds up, I'm not sure, because there's 60 seconds in a minute. So that's basically like 1503.5. And I guess, here, let's get particular. What is the distance between 1503.40 Virgo and 1239.01 Libra? Okay, so if I add 30 to this, I'm at 1503.40 Libra. So I subtract 3 from there. So I think I said 50. If I had 30 degrees to Virgo, if I had one sign, I'm at 15 Libra. If I had 30 to 15 Virgo, I'm at 15 Libra, right? So I had 30. I subtract 3 to get back to 12. Maybe this is easier to see in the chart. Adding 30, subtracting 3 would take me to 1203 Libra. Well, then I have to add another 36 minutes. Okay, and let's put all those seconds aside and we'll just do that. So we're going to say that these two live 27 degrees and 36 arc minutes apart. Okay, well, 36 arc minutes, if I divide 36 by 60, I see that that's 0.6 of a degree. All right, 6/10 of a degree or 2/5 of a degree. I'm going to add that to 27. And this is how far apart in degrees, zodiacal degrees, Mercury and Venus are in my chart. And, I could switch this to one of the many sidereal zodiacs, and that will remain true. In longitude, Mercury and Venus are 27.6 degrees away from one another in the moment of my birth, okay? So if I want to understand something about how they relate and maybe something more about this mutual reception of theirs, it's an interesting thing to explore this, okay? So what is the percentage of a circle that they are distanced from one another, right? With this Mars Sun, it's trine. I can say it's a third of the circle. It's 120 degrees away. Now, not exactly, and I could get more precise, right? And that's one thing that harmonics offer. But I'm here now, 27.6. So I'm just going to divide a circle of 360 degrees by 27.6. And I get 13. Now, it's not exactly 13, but it's pretty damn close. Okay, let's see what happens when we divide the wheel by 13. We get 27.69. Okay, and I'm looking here at 27.6. So it's really close to that. Now, what a harmonic chart is really a tale for another time, like a deep dive. All right, but let me just show you that if I cast a harmonic, a 13th harmonic of my nativity, we're going to find Mercury and Venus conjoined. Okay. Now they're a degree away. They're a degree and a third away, right? A degree and 20 arc minutes is 1.33 degrees. But the rule is, if I want to see how close they are to, like in this case, a 13th harmonic, in the 13th harmonic chart, I divide that orb, that distance of 1.33 degrees, by the harmonic, which is 13, and we get 0.1. Okay, so this means in my natal chart, Mercury and Venus are 0.1 degree out from a perfect 13th harmonic. Now, they do happen to be a 13th of the zodiac away from one another. In a harmonic chart, I can't tell actually, are they just conjunct? Or are they 1/13 of the circle away, or 2/13 or 3/13 or more? And that's as much as I want to say about that. Now, I will say that in the Vedic tradition, like a Nimvamsha chart, you're really interested in which sign the planets live in the divisional chart. Most Western astrologers who have been called to harmonic astrology, they're not. They're just like, how far apart are they? They get, I find over time, less and less interested in signs in general. I very much am. And like, I'll bring the rules of natal astrology here too. Like, what is it that here they are in this divisional chart, this 13th chart in Pisces, where Venus is said to be exalted, but Mercury is said to be in fall and in exile. like how might that contribute to what the relationship of Mercury and Venus in my natal chart is all about, right? These are questions, right? I don't have answers, but when I look at that, the 13th harmonic relationship that brings Mercury and Venus together, then a resource that I love is David Cochran's The First 32 Harmonics, a qualitative research study, which you can find in many places online for free. Um, let's see if David has his website written here. Oh, it's Cosmic Patterns. Astro Software is one, but I think he also has Cosmic Patterns. But I know they have this at astro.com, and you can just search online the first 32 harmonics by David Cochran, and you will find this paper. And I mean, it's a really cool paper. Like David at first kind of goes through, I think, a little bit about what harmonics are, and then he gets into some transmissions about what others have said about these particular harmonics. Like, let's just go to 13, since our quest has brought us there. Okay, so we get the 13th harmonic is the one among the 12 and suggests lordship. Well, I missed out on the lordship thing. I don't love the word, and I'm not too sad I missed out, I think. But the 12, the one among the 12, you can hear the number magic intrigue there for sure, right? And that's something I say about the 13. I just did a 2-hour video on my Instagram yesterday about the 12 and the 13 and how many months a year, and you can get, dive deep there. And I always like to say the 13th is the first. Like the 13th moon of a year is actually the first moon of the next lunar year. And I kind of digress, but that's interesting to read. It seems to have a similar effect to the sign of Scorpio. They both relate to death and rebirth, transformation, as well as group resources and values, marks. I think that's probably Tracy marks, but I'm not exactly sure. Well, that's interesting. Why would the 13 relate to Scorpio, death, and rebirth? Well, I think Ms. Marks, I do believe this is Tracy Marks, was playing with her tarot cards, right? I mean, oftentimes, like in the base 10 system of counting, we'll say like, 9 or even, and like is or the 10 is the ultimate number. There's so many different systems, so many different ways to play. Like the astrologically inclined might find that like 12 is in a sense like the ultimate number, or the end of the cycle or something, and what comes after the end but death, or is death not the end? Anyway, I think most of you know I'm flipping through a Wade Coleman Smith deck here, and anyway, I couldn't find the card, but most of you, I imagine, know that 13 is the death card in the tarot, and at least since the Golden Dawn times, that 13 card was also related to the sign of Scorpio, where astrologers often relate the sign with death and rebirth, which might have to do something with the northern hemisphere seasonal time of the sun passing through that tropical sign. Or in the astrological alphabet of modern times, the idea of the 8th and house of death and rebirth and Scorpio related, who knows, right? So as I said before, we take this system and this system and we massage them together and see what comes out. All right, then we read, the 13th harmonic indicates a sense of mission and purpose, a feeling that one must achieve something great or unique. The 1/14th aspect indicates giving up what one has completed in order to move on to the next cycle of activity. Interesting, and this is from Godfrey, and you hear something like the death and rebirth there too. That 1/14th, I think this is a typo, and that should say 1/13th. Because you can also have 2/13ths and 3/13ths of the circle. I happen to have my Mercury and Venus separated in that way. I mean, interestingly, we don't hear from David Cochran in the 13th. Usually you'll find for all of these, it ends with what Cochran has to say. It's his paper, but not for 13. I'm intrigued by that. Playing with the primes is difficult because with 13, it can work with sums, like 5 plus 8 is 13. It doesn't really work vibrational, like a fourth is, the second of the second, if you will. Or an eighth, I can play with 2 and 4, or a 10th is like a fifth, but for 2, right? So you'll see things like in the 5th harmonic quintile, 72-degree family. Let's see, David writes there, the 5th harmonic indicates playfulness and creativity. Okay, well, if you go to 10th, the 10th harmonic is a small creative aspect, right? So sometimes the 10th, it's like a smaller division, so like maybe a smaller thing. People will say like, the The sextile is kind of like a smaller trine. Trine is more benefic. The 10th harmonic is small creative act and helps to transmute an idea into a concrete form. That's interesting because I feel fourness in there. But it intensifies what the heck is that word? Perspicacy, I don't know that word, and intuition, and fosters the ability to develop mutual relationships. Okay, so that and here we're reading from Godfrey. Let me read. Sorry, and I should have jumped here about what David Cochrane says, right? Because here about the fifth, David's like the fifth harmonic indicates playfulness and creativity, and then for the 10th. David says the 10th harmonic inclines towards playful creative activities with others. The others is the two, me and you, the second, right? So 10 is 5 times 2. I take the essence of the fifth and think about how that might express in relationship. And you'll find in this paper, if you're so inclined to review, that things like the 9th harmonic seeks acceptance and inclusion in a larger community. That's an interesting delineation for the 9th. But if we get to the 18th harmonic indicates a strong need to be part of a positive and harmonious community, to participate as an appreciated and respected member, right? So you hear the 9th, at least David Cochrane's version of the 9th in the 18th. And maybe that appreciation and respected is as much as he's saying about the two-ness there. And like, I'm here in this community and I need one of y'all to recognize me there. Yeah, the 9th typically, I mean, interestingly, in Vedic astrology, it's associated with the 7th house and relationship, but it's also just kind of deep soul. So this transmission of the 9th kind of surprises me. I'm typically see things more like this. The 9th harmonic is the fruit of the tree. It is both the chart of the soulmate and the chart of the soul itself, or the soul of the chart, some say. Additionally, astrologer Addy, father of harmonics, like a Western review of harmonics or exploration of them, said the 9th also represents some particular life work towards which you are heading, whether we know it or not. Okay. Now, many of the softwares like this give me the option just to throw a bunch of different aspect calculations there. And so I can go like this grid and I can see, for example, I was born with the sun, novile, Neptune. That means they're 40 degrees apart, right? I go here to 1 degree Scorpio, and I add 30 and I'm at 1 Sag, and I add another 10 and that's 11 Sag. And so they're about a degree out from a novile, and that's what this shows, right? So the sun is separating from a novile with Neptune. It's 50 arc minutes, or about a degree out from a perfect novile. The U's are undeciles, 11ths, okay? This is not showing me 19ths, right? So I'm not seeing something show up between Mercury and Venus on the grid at all. But if it did include, not 19ths, 13ths, it's not showing 19ths either, then this would show whatever letter we would use to express 13th, okay? Because that's the harmonic relationship or distance between Mercury and Venus in my nativity, right? And the 13, again, I'm not going to be able to multiply 9 by 2 to get 18, or 5 by 2 to get 10, or 5 by 4 to get 20. Let me just show you that. The 20th harmonic indicates a need to create. That's like, and to work in a creative way. So work, need, those can be fourths. 20th harmonic aspects can become easily bored by repetitive tasks. That's interesting. So David's doing just a lot of research into this by looking at a lot of natal charts that have a good amount of 20 in them. Okay. And actually this paper, after like this bit, will then get down, let me just search for 13th here. And again, right? So then he goes through like different chart examples of people who have a lot of these types of harmonics in their charts. I don't, Barry Cryer, a comedian, right? And he talks about this, and we get to hear more things. Like the consistent theme of the 13th harmonic appears to be a pioneering sense of mission and purpose, and a desire to break into something new. Okay, well, I can say I've got that. Mercury is, according to the tradition, the steersman of my chart. Many would see that kind of need to create something new and break out impulse in my nativity in the Sun-Uranus conjunction. maybe an Aquarius midheaven making that part of my work, right? We get to the similar stories when we approach the chart in the lens of many different paradigms. It comes from even house systems or zodiacs or whatever. Okay, and that's when we really, when a theme repeats again and again, when we're looking through different lenses, we can have more confidence in that being a reality, right? For a person, it's of course a lot easier in some regards to look at our own charts because we know something about ourselves. In another sense, our own chart is the hardest one to see, right? Because we're so damn biased. All right. Anyway, so that's one application. Let me show you another example. So like, if this person came to me and they're asking about relationships, like many would go right to Venus, some would go like Venus and Mars. So I might be interested in exploring how far they are apart if I want to take kind of a harmonic aspect vision of the two. Some astrologies would say, okay, well, look at the dispositor of the first house, right? Gemini, and so that's Mercury. And the ruler of the seventh house, right? And Sagittarius, so that's Jupiter. What's their relationship? Oh, they're in opposition. And because Mercury is moving much faster, in fact, Jupiter is moving retrograde. That's indicated by these red numbers in this particular display in Astro Gold software. Then they're applying to that opposition. So if I look at the grid, we're going to see Mercury opposite Jupiter. This is going to be what they call these days orb. They're 5 degrees, 5.5 degrees, 5 degrees, 29 minutes from a perfect opposition. And it's applying. Okay, well, that's 29 arc minutes, 30 is a half, so I'm just going to call that 30 because this is helpful to see that it's 5 degrees in 30 minutes or 5.5 degrees out from a perfect opposition. It's going to help me just do this math, right? Because the opposition from 12.5 Libra is going to be 12.5 Aries, and I need to add another 5.5 degrees to get there. So the opposition of 180 degrees plus 5.5 degrees will show me this geometric distance between Mercury and Jupiter. Okay, so 180 plus 5.5 is 185.5. What happens if I divide a circle by that? Oops, this is missing a division sign. I get 1.94, right? It's very close to 2. All right, so because 2 is the opposition, right? So if I divide the circle in half, all right, 180, right? If I divide 360 by 180, I'm going to get 2. But I divided by 185.5. And so they are 1.94, like harmonic. Well, so, but that, like, I need to make this a whole number. And, so I'll just say it's 2. But if I want to get a little bit more precise, frankly, I'm not sure what to do with that one. I'm just playing here. Is it this? No. Is it 17? Anyway, so multiplying this number by whole numbers until I get to a whole number is the key, okay? So I divided it by 7. So let me go from the top, right? I find out that Mercury and Jupiter are 185.5 degrees away from one another. Okay, I divide the circle by that distance, 185.5, and I get this weird number, okay? So even there, I'm so close to 2, I could just say it's a second harmonic. Well, of course, that's the opposition, Libra's opposite Aries. But if I want to get more precise, I can try to multiply this by 3, 4, 5, see what happens. And it just so happens that 1.94 times 17 is almost a whole number, in the number 33, okay? This means that my Mercury and Jupiter are 17, remember that's the number I multiplied their number by, 17 33rds of a zodiac apart from one another. So let me show you that another way. If I'm going to take this circle and divide it by 33. Okay, I got to do that again. Oh, that was right. I just pushed this button too many times, so I got scared. A 33rd of a circle of 360 degrees is 10.9 degrees, okay? If I multiply that 33rd of a circle by 17, 185.45. There's that 185.5, right? I mean, this is actually probably even closer because I had to round up to get 5.5 out of 4. But now 17 33rds in this direction is also 16 33rds in this direction. Let me just show you that. I'm going to divide the wheel by 33 and then multiply that by 16. So this is 174.5 degrees. All right, well, if I add 174.5 from 18 Aries in our weird math, I'm going to get here to 12.5 Libra. All right, well, what the heck is a 33rd? I can there actually start with the 11. Let's go to David's paper again. Does he talk about the 33rd? Well, this is the first 32 harmonics, so I think I'm out of luck. Missed it by that much. Let's see. I think he ends with the 32nd and then says, oh, and by the way, 125. That's exactly what happens, okay? So I'm not going to get anything from this particular paper about the 33rd harmonic. What a drag. However, I can go look at the 11th, right? The 11th harmonic shows pure imagination and fantasy, according to Marx. Come with me and you'll see a world of pure imagination. And, you know, I'm looking at these just as an example to speak about planets. Mercury rules the first and Jupiter the seventh, the kind of relationship. Well, notice I also have Neptune in Jupiter's sign setting, right? Does that feel like imagination and fantasy and relationships, right? So again, we want to find, from the points of view of different systems or techniques or approaches, a common story. All right. You know how I'm always talking about my partner, Anna? I actually don't have one. I've just invented her. And I'm just kidding. No, but I do want to have imagination and fantasy in my relationship reality. Seymour Smith says, 11th house aspects manifest in a very definite way and they indicate excess. They also, according to Williamson, describe a person's ability to integrate diversities and dualisms. These interpretations are irreconcilable, the tension of double bind situations, which can be external, where you're trapped by feelings of obligation or duty, but cannot entirely please one or more people, or internal, the tug between skepticism and faith. I have a lot of that. And likely to lead to a type of stress. I have a lot of that, which is in turn will lead to excess in one form or another. Interesting. That's fun. Look at, like, David found that on some forum of a Linda Goodman forum, like comment post or something. Deep researcher. The 111th aspect indicates the ability to reach beyond oneself for help and to have a strong social consciousness. I don't know, those two transmissions relate. The 11th harmonic is unstable, Uranian, and hungry for something new, and is innovative and impatient and inclined to music and dance. Getting enough sleep and avoiding too many stimulants is important. Yeah, I have. Okay. Yes, sir. Haven't done the best job of that. There's a thing I say about the 11s, like when I divide 360 by 7, again, this is this endless number. That 6 is a 571428, 571428 till the cow's gone home. And this is why some of the number magic traditions considered 7 to be the first virgin. It does not divide the circle equally. The 11th is the next. Interestingly, the only two whole numbers between 1 and 12 that require in the English language more than one syllable to speak, 7 and 11. Now look at when I divide a circle by 11, this is endless too. That's 2727 or 727272727 forever. But it's like trying to comply. And one of the ways that I speak about the 7s and the 11s, and I see this show up and it often resonates with clients, is that, let me show you, like in my chart, there's a good amount of 7s, like Mercury biseptile, 2/7 of the circle away from Mars. It's about 103 degrees. Moon biseptile Pluto, a really strong Jupiter ascendant septile. Okay. And then you'll see some of these U's, or let me get more particular. So I feel personally that the sevens, the septile family, they kind of take us out to the far out beyond realms. Okay. And then the 11s can speak about ways that we are designed to bring the far out into this world. And you can see how strong the 11th is in my chart. All these U's, right? This is like 3 11ths, 2 11ths, etc. If I cast an 11th harmonic chart, we're going to see, oops, fine. We're going to see a lot of different conjunctions like moon node, or somebody was with an 11th with the ascendant, which somehow is not exactly showing here. Oh no, that was Jupiter 7 with the ascendant. There's the Mars Pluto. Anyway, I want to just show you one other thing. Like, look at in this 11th harmonic chart. Do you see how strong of a trine we have between Mercury and Jupiter? Well, the trine is 3. If I multiply 11 by 3, I get 33. Remember how that's what brought us here? Okay, so if I cast a 33rd harmonic of my birth moment, that's when we are going to find the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. And remember the rule, look, they're about 1 degree and a third out from a perfect kind of connection in this chart. So if I take that 1.3 and divide it by the harmonic, it's 0.04, right? That means they're only 0.04 degrees away from a perfect 33rd harmonic in my nativity. Like, it's definitely the place I want to be. Sadly, again, in this paper, I'm not going to get a story about the 33rd or people who have 33s in their chart, but I can study the 11 and then kind of consider, contemplate, deep dive into the Trinity's expression of the 11, right? I could study the 3 and study the 11 and then try to bring them together. See how, what would happen if we took a trine and 11'd it, or take, more importantly, an 11th and trined it. Okay. I might, if I could take this deep dive enough, find a difference between 3 33rds versus 4 33rds versus 16 33rds, which in one way is 17 33rds in the other way, and that's where I'm up to with my Mercury Jupiter, right? So I mean, this is like new territory in many regards, and there are precedents, but when we start getting into higher numbers, it gets a little bit loose. Now, David's work has gone like way beyond the first 32 harmonics, and so he, or people that he's trained, would be people that I could check in with, vibrational astrologers. But I'll also be studying this myself and seeing just what arrives for me as I do. And maybe at that time when it is received, I will share it with you. I'm very interested in training astrologers to incorporate and investigate these so-called minor aspects and harmonics. And I like to show, unlike many other teachers, like where it comes from, how it works. Tricky thing is we have to do a little bit of calculator to do that. But actually, in the way the presentations I'm building to teach these things, they're very beautifully illustrated. So like, actually, if I take Aries as a sign and divide it into 33rds, you'll actually see how a 33rd harmonic chart is created visually, right? Which helps us bring it into the body mind and out of like the calculator mind. All right. Last thing I'll say for now is I was just playing this morning with the harmonic relationship between Anna, yes, she exists, and Venus in her nativity, and Venus in my nativity. So I have Venus in Virgo, as you saw, and Anna has Venus in a different sign. And there's so many degrees apart, right? And they're actually 74.4 degrees apart. So it's really close to 72, which is this kind of creative, playful, artistic quintile pentacle family, but they are actually like right in like a perfect 29th harmonic from one another. And in David's work, he says the 29th harmonic indicates an interest in abstract ideas and unusual subjects like astrology. And he also writes his interpretation is tentative and somewhat speculative. Well, aren't all of these things? This is new territory. But interestingly, like Anna and I met through astrology, right? Like a pretty out there study or interest. And we first started spending time together online, not romantically, but working together. Anna helped me illustrate some of my sacred astronomy stuff. I really wanted to take like these astronomical images and bring the zodiac back into them, because they slowly over time, like the signs and stuff are removed from the pictures when the astronomers show them. I like to teach astronomy. I'll be starting a new astronomy course for Kepler College, by the way, on Wednesday next week, January 25th, I believe it is. So if you want to study some sacred astronomy with me, go check out Naked Eye Astronomy at Kepler College. You will find your way there. You could, if you're good at doing self-guided tours through pre-recorded classes, you'll get a lot more information, honestly, maybe too much, if you go to geminibrett.com/courses and check out the Sacred Astronomy course there. It's a deep dive and very mystical, and I think you will really dig it if you haven't seen that material yet. You will also at that page find my School of Earth Astrology. The text needs to be updated. It's on a little break right now. I'll be teaching a lot of workshops this year, but the golden year of classes, and there's so much material, hundreds of hours of material, can be yours for a very low price. That's going to get raised soon, but if you wanted to do the golden year last year and you couldn't, and whatever, if you like the way that I teach and you're interested in seeing it, go tune into that. You're going to receive a lot of astrology for not much money. You will at my website also find sessions page. If you want to dive into some of these themes in your own chart with me, I would be happy and honored to journey with you into the song of your soul. You'll find about the Song of the Soul, this project I have with the great musician Eric Deutsch there as well. And also, there's a tip jar. There's a donate button at my website at geminibrett.com. So if you'd love to give back a little bit of something for what you've received here, I would gladly receive it. Of course, your presence is the greatest present. That's even more felt, by the way, if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you will get notified when I go live spontaneously like this. And please share this video around if you feel that there are others you know who would be interested in the topics. Let me say one more thing. So since I found that Anna and I have our natal Venus is separated by 1/29th of the zodiac, when I cast a 29th harmonic chart of my nativity, and also a 29th harmonic chart of her nativity, then our Venuses are conjunct in like the synastry of those 29th harmonic charts. And I gotta say, that one's tested really well. And it intrigues me. So I was one of the things that not only blew my mind this morning, as you can clearly see has happened, but inspired me when I found the time, which is now, to share some of this with you. Hope you have enjoyed.